Peter Pan's Neverland is one of the 4 mini-lands that make up Tokyo DisneySea's newest expansion, Fantasy Springs. While Skull Rock and Captain Hook's pirate ship have been in Disney parks around the world since the 50s, this is the first time guests are able to see even more of Neverland. What does the land have to offer? What are the dining options like? And do the 2 rides here live up to all the hype? I'm Jordan at 8-Bit Theme Park, a local Tokyo theme park nerd, and today I'm giving you a full rundown of everything you need to know about Peter Pan's Neverland in Fantasy Springs. Before we get started, if you have a trip planned for Tokyo Disney coming up, or if you just want to know more about this unique Disney resort, be sure to subscribe, and if you'd like early access to videos and other perks, please check out the Patreon in the description, or scan the QR code on screen now. So in this video, I want to talk about every single thing there is to talk about this area, because I have a lot of opinions and I have a lot to say. We're going to start off by looking at the area, meaning the large props that you see here, as well as the details and the theming. Then we're going to move on to the different dining locations and what they offer. There are no shops or retail locations in this mini-land, so there's nothing to talk about there. Then after that, we're going to talk about the 2 brand new rides that are totally unique to DisneySea, Fairy Tinkerbell's Busy Buggies and Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure. So I think one thing to keep in mind before we start diving into the details is that these are mini-lands. Yes, they're very impressive, and there's plenty to see, but this is not a land, this is not something comparable to Pandora World of Avatar or Cars Land or Galaxy's Edge or that kind of thing. It's a mini-land. Now, we could have a whole discussion on whether or not the right move was to have mini-lands in Fantasy Springs, or whether it would have been better to have the whole area be a more coherent, single IP land. There's a lot of pros and cons on either side, but this is what we ended up getting, and I think it's wonderful. I love having all of this variety in the area. I love that it caters to different demographics. And I think it makes the whole expansion feel a lot more future-proof than if it was just a Frozen ride that was capitalizing on the success of the, I was going to say recent movie, but it's like 11 years old now, right? But still, it's going to cater to a lot more people for a lot longer, which I think was a smart move. Whilst if you looked at the land on the map, you could be forgiven for thinking this is just a path. It's really not, and they've done a great job of really using the small space that they did have to have all these small winding paths that make it feel a lot more expansive than it actually is. Because of this, there are actually 4 different entry points into the land. We're going to go from the one that most people will use, which is the one right at the front of the park-facing side. I mean, funnily enough, the first time I went in the land, I came from the other side, from the hotel, which I actually kind of think is a better introduction to the land, but seeing as most people will come through the main entrance, we'll go this way. Now again, with it being a mini-land that's part of a broader area, there's not really like an entrance, there's not really a feeling of, oh, now we're stepping into Neverland. You're just kind of suddenly there. And coming in from this side, the Neverland Mountains are on your left, but the way that they're positioned, because they're basically on the roof of the queue for the Neverland Adventure ride, there are kind of these sheer cliff faces that are closer to you that stop you from getting a good view. You have to be much further back to really get a view of the mountains. But what you will notice quickly on your right is Captain Hook's pirate ship and Skull Rock. And whilst I was very skeptical about this small body of water that's mostly taken up by a pirate ship, which obviously can't go anywhere, you're not thinking about that when you see it. It really does work. And I just love, going back to what I said at the beginning of the video, the original Disneyland park had a Captain Hook's pirate ship and Skull Rock, and then in 1992 they recreated it on a grander scale for Disneyland Paris in Adventureland, and now I love that we have another one here in Tokyo. And this is the spot, and I think every mini-land in Fantasy Springs has this one small area where when you stand there, it feels like the area is much, much bigger than it actually is, because you're completely surrounded by things, and some of it even feels like it's off to the distance. Here, the way they do it is probably the best of any of the areas of Fantasy Springs, because you can see people on Captain Hook's pirate ship, you can see people inside Skull Rock, and you can see people walking the other side of the lake, pool, pond, I don't know, you decide what this body of water should be referred to as. The fact that these areas are not just static things that you're looking at, but they're actually areas that you can go and explore, really adds a lot to this area and makes it feel like much more than just the front of 2 rides. If you're anything like me, as soon as you see these things, you're going to want to go over there and climb on board. And it's very easy to see how you get over there. You either go around the lake to the left or you go around to the right. Now, as I said, the first time I ever came into the land, I came from the hotel. So the first thing I saw was the back of Skull Rock, which might sound a bit weird, but I loved getting this reveal of seeing a few details, and I'll get into these smaller details later because there are some really charming ones. But seeing a few small details and kind of knowing we're in Neverland, and then, oh, that must be the back of Skull Rock then. And then walking through and looking out of one of the eyes and seeing the Neverland Mountains, and then to the left seeing Captain Hook's pirate ship. That's a great vantage point. It's a really beautiful view from there. And then you can finally see the Neverland Mountains from here. And they're pretty incredible. I mean, another thing Disney have been doing since the 50s is building mountains. There are plenty of them. We've seen plenty of Disney mountains in the past, but this one really pushes the fantasy aspect. Not only with the colors and the shapes of them, but I love that they put these clouds in. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but it really does. Do they read as clouds all the time? I don't know, but I think they look great, and they really push this cartoonish aspect of the area. They even added some kinetic energy in that way that DisneySea has done time and time again. Have smoke coming out of the top of it. It worked for Mount Prometheus, it works for SS Columbia, and it works here as well. And you've got to love Tokyo Disney because you know for a fact that just like those other examples I just mentioned, this smoke effect will keep working for years and years to come. But for me, the time when the Neverland Mountains really come into their own is, unsurprisingly, if you've ever seen anything in a Disney park at nighttime, it's at nighttime. I don't always love that Disney light up so much of their stuff in bright blue at night. Sometimes it can be a little bit cartoonish and it doesn't fit the vibe of the area. Here, I feel the exact opposite. The first time I saw this at night, seeing the orange light from inside contrasting so heavily with the blue light on the outside, and then also the orange lighting up the smoke effect that's coming out, I felt like I'd stepped inside Peter Pan's flight. It's like you've shrunk down and gone into that Neverland that you see on that ride that you've flown over time and time again. Of course, the whole area looks even more magical at night time. They do a wonderful job lighting up Skull Rock and Captain Hook's pirate ship. And the entrance to one of the rides here is honestly stunning and punches way above its weight, but I'll get to that later on. Speaking of the lighting, now might be a good time to get into the smaller details of the land because it is absolutely full of them. And one of my favorites is that every single lighting fixture is a different sort of contraption that the Lost Boys have come up with, made out of old bits of shipwreck. You see a lot of this theme throughout the Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure ride and also the Lookout Cookout restaurants, again, which we'll get to. A lot of this area is based around the idea that you're somewhere the Lost Kids have kind of put together. You're at their hideout and they've found little bits of broken shipwreck and bits and bobs that they've thrown together to make a den and to make all of these things. This extends to some of the smaller props around the area as well. I love this sort of makeshift totem pole. Like, it really ties together all of the different themes of Peter Pan really nicely for me. And it gives you that feeling that you always get at DisneySea, which is that they refuse to ever let you not be looking at something. You're always looking at something. Once again, it is a mini land of many in this area, so it's not huge, but for the space that there are some great details. I love this area just before you get into Skull Rock from the back. Not only does it make use of the different levels, the fact that you've gone up into Skull Rock so you can be looking down, but it also helps to make it clear that this is the Skull Rock from the movie, and you can see the boat that Mr. Smee sails down in, a chest of buried treasure and jewels, and you can even see Smee's footprints in the sand where he's walked over to the ladder to climb out. Just these wonderful little touches that really give it that DisneySea feeling of going beyond for the sake of detail. And on the topic of footsteps in the ground, something that gets overlooked in 99% of theme park lands, especially ones that are a little bit older, is the ground. Well, not here, because here you can see footsteps of the Lost Kids who've been going around. You can see where they've been scratching things on the floor, maybe marking the amount of wins they've had in their games that they're playing or something. You can even see them playing tic-tac-toe in the ground in one area. Just gorgeous attention to detail that really makes this area stand out. So I'm sure you've gathered at this point the placemaking, from the small details that are all over this area to the huge set pieces like Skull Rock and Captain Hook's ship and the Neverland Mountains. It's very DisneySea. It's very, from the big to the small, we're going to think about everything, and we're going to create an area where you just want to be before you even get to the rides and the restaurants. And whilst there's really no need to pick favorites because we get to have all of them, it's wonderful. Of the 3 mini-lands that are based on films, which is an important distinction that I'll get to in another video, I think this is my favorite. I just love being here. I love all the details. I love how fun it is. If you're finding this video fun, please do remember to give it a like. That means that YouTube will share it to more people, and more people get to share in the fun we're having. Yay, fun! Okay, so what can you eat in Peter Pan's Neverland? And where can you eat it? There are 2 food disposal areas? There's a restaurant and there's a popcorn stand, okay? Anyone who has been to Tokyo Disney Resort before will know that they do not play around when it comes to popcorn. There are several different popcorn locations across both parks, and most of them have different flavors. Here they brought in a brand new flavor just for Peter Pan's Neverland, and it is roast beef. We have roast beef flavored popcorn, and just in between Skull Rock and the entrance to Fairy Tinkerbell's busy Buggies, you can find, again, something that the Lost Boys have clearly constructed out of old bits of wood that they've found, and then doodled all over. The popcorn stand looks great. It's one of the good ones, and it uses something that DisneySea have done in the past, which is using it to sort of bridge different lands. Like, you see the popcorn stand and it introduces the theme of the area. I love that even these tiny things that make DisneySea DisneySea, they have thought about and they have used in this area. This is why I can't imagine this being anywhere else. It is DisneySea. But yeah, I love the stand. How about the popcorn? Well, it's not the worst and it's not the best. Of course, this is just my opinion. If you like beef gravy, imagine someone taking beef gravy granules and throwing it in a bag of popcorn and sticking it in the microwave. That's basically what this is. It's like beef gravy flavored popcorn. That's the best way I can describe it. I could definitely see some people really liking it, so it may be worth having a try. But I much prefer the garlic shrimp if you want something savory at DisneySea. And then if you want something sweet, the matcha white chocolate. Ugh, I love that one. This doesn't hold a candle to either of those for me, but it's not bad. Another thing this has going for it is it's one of only 2 locations in Fantasy Springs where you can buy food without having to mobile order in advance. Now, I won't get into it too much here. I'll do a whole video about all the systems that you need to get into Fantasy Springs at some point. But that's a little bit boring, so I wanted to do some fun videos first. But basically, you have to mobile order to eat in any of the restaurants, and the mobile orders sell out pretty quickly, so it can be quite hard to get something to eat. And once you get in Fantasy Springs, you can't leave and come back in unless you have a pass for another ride. Oh, it's so complicated. But yeah, it can result in, if you don't want to leave Fantasy Springs, but you're hungry, popcorn and the bread in Frozen Kingdom might be your only options. So the popcorn gets a point for that, I guess. This is the only popcorn stand in Fantasy Springs. But if you can get a mobile order for it, there is I hesitate to say restaurant because they don't really sell meals, they sell snacks and drinks. But there's a counter-service restaurant called Lookout Cookout, and my goodness, I just love this place. Before you even get inside, you'll notice that theme that I kept talking about of the Lost Kids having built a lot of this stuff. This is like their magnum opus. This is like the thing they've been working on all year, right? This is the Lookout Cookout. This is their lookout. One thing I do wish is it's called Lookout Cookout, and you can see that there's an area to climb up there and look out, right? And there's also a level just behind that, and it would be so cool if you could go up there. It would give the place more seating, which it clearly needs, at least for the time being. And also, it's a lookout. You should be able to go up there, right? But that's kind of nitpicky. Another thing you may notice before you even get in is that the cast members here are just dancing all the time, which, I mean, if I was working there and on my first day, my boss was like, oh, by the way, you do also have to dance constantly. I don't know how I would feel about that, but the cast members here seem to be enjoying it, or at least they're good at pretending that they are, but it does add a really fun vibe, and I highly recommend dancing along with them. You'll make their day. We got some good smiles out of them when we started dancing along with them. When you get in the restaurant, you'll see all of the lost kids. Oh, by the way, I keep flitting between lost boys and lost kids because in the area they refer to them as the lost kids, but in the movie they're the lost boys, and as far as I'm aware, they're all still boys when you see them in the ride here, but I don't know. But yeah, you get to this counter area and oh, it's just delightful. So many fun little details in here. This is like where it just goes all in on the doodles on all the walls. Everything is mismatched. And you have to really take a step back and appreciate that nothing is repeating. There's no like repeating patterns. Everything is so organic and really does look like it was built by children. It's very, very cool. The area here where you grab your food is actually the only part of the restaurant that is entirely indoors. The seating area, whilst it is covered, which was a very wise move because we have entire months of rain here, it is outside, which might not be great in the middle of summer when the humidity is nearly 100% and it feels like 40 degrees outside. I did notice some pretty beefy aircon units in the ceiling, but I don't know how much good they're going to be doing in 40 degrees real feel temperatures. But hey, I do love being here when the weather's all right because you still feel like you're in the land and you just listen to me for 10 minutes gushing about how much I love this land. You get to still be in there. You can see Captain Hook's pirate ship a little bit through the trees. You can see Skull Rock a little bit through the trees. You can see the people walking by. It's a lovely spot to stop and chill and just be able to take the land in a bit. Because one thing I did notice around the area is there aren't that many benches. There aren't that many places you can just sit and just enjoy being there and soak it up. I think that's a crowd flow thing, and I think maybe they'll add some more benches around there when the crowds die down a little bit and the newness wears off. But this restaurant gives you an opportunity to sit and take it in and take a second to just be like, we're at Fantasy Springs, it's happening. Okay, so how about the food? Well, it's food, it's weird, it's very, very strange. It's really strange. So you can get this snack box and you can get a chocolate brownie, and those are the only two things on the menu. This might sound a little strange, and this is why I hesitated referring to it as a restaurant to begin with, but there is some precedent for this. We do have places like Nautilus Galley in Mysterious Island, where all you can do is buy a gyoza dog, which is basically a long steamed meat bun. They're really good, and then there's a little covered seating area there. This felt very similar to that. But the gyoza dogs are really simple and really, really tasty. The Lookout Cookout snack box, okay, so it comes in two different flavors. One of them is lemon, and one of them is butter chicken curry. And I quite liked both of them. But the items that you get are just, it's a strange mix. It's a strange selection of things. So I'll go through it. Here you've got a prawn cracker, a single prawn cracker, because why not? Some banana chips. I like banana chips, okay. Fried chicken goujons, chicken tenders. They were fine. And honestly, with the lemon, I liked the lemon and the butter chicken one. If you're sharing, maybe get a couple of boxes and share them both if both flavors sound appealing, because I did quite like both of them. The lemon seems to be like a sauce, or not a sauce, I don't know, like an oil maybe, that they spray on the top. So the chicken got kind of soggy with the lemon one. Whereas when I had the butter chicken curry flavor, the curry is a powder that they put on the top. So those felt a bit too dry. So I don't know, it may have just been a coincidence and those were the batches that we got, but it seemed like there wasn't really a happy medium between the two there. These round ball things are fried seaweed fritters, which might sound really strange and weird and like it's going to be a taste you've never tasted before, but they're just kind of salty fried things. I would highly recommend, even if you're not the most adventurous of eaters, I would give one of these a go because they're tiny and they're just salty fried goodness, and who doesn't like something that's salty and fried? So all of that was fine. Strange, but fine. I enjoyed the chicken, actually. But then in the middle, you just have a giant, dry Yorkshire pudding. And I don't know if this is just because I'm British, but it kind of offends me. It's just not good. Like, a Yorkshire pudding needs some gravy or some mashed potato or a sausage in the middle. You eat it with a knife and fork. Like, I don't know who is enjoying eating a dry Yorkshire pudding with their hands. And that's another thing with the whole box. Like, you look at especially the chicken and the seafood fritters. And you're like, oh, it's like a dipping box. So what sauces can you get? No, they don't have any sauces, which is very strange because in almost every other counter service restaurant, they offer a couple of different spicy sauces that you can pay extra to get. And that would really go a long way here, I think, just having those same spicy sauces they have elsewhere, or if they introduced some, like a little dip set, like you get with your nuggets at McDonald's or something. That would really go a long way. And then maybe they wouldn't have to offer this lemon and curry options that kind of make the chicken too dry or too soggy. You could just have some normal chicken tenders and dip them in some different dips. And you know, you'll see when I do videos about the other areas, Fantasy Springs and the other restaurants, that the food across the board isn't great, but luckily this is one of the things that is the most likely to change. Not only is it the easiest thing to change, but Tokyo Disney tend not to change rides, they tend not to change areas very much, but they do change the food menus. And especially if they get feedback that says that these things aren't that popular, I'm sure these will change in the future. Hopefully we get some nice snacks in here, because I love the area. I love just sitting in here and having a drink and having a little snack. It's really, really nice. But it's just a very strange choice. Okay, so we've walked through the land, we've admired the huge set pieces, we've admired the small details, we grabbed a box of roast beef flavored popcorn, we had this weird snack box and a beer in Lookout Cookout. Let's get on some rides, Jordan. Okay. First up, as soon as you exit Lookout Cookout, right on your left, you're gonna see Fairy Tinkerbell's Busy Buggies. And not to get ahead of myself, but this is the best ride that Disney, or anyone for that matter, have ever made. So, you know, no big deal. I mean, the ride entrance does promise a lot. You see the cast members in their wonderful fairy costumes, and then the sign for the entrance is just beautifully detailed, and it sets the scene. Okay, so anyone who's been listening to my podcast or watching this channel for a while will know that I thought this name was really, really stupid. I thought it was very silly, because look at it, it's so long. But it actually communicates some important information. So one of my wonderful viewers pointed out, oh, so is it Faith, Trust, and Fairy Dust now? Because it's Fairy Tinkerbell? Like, wasn't she a pixie in the Peter Pan films? Yes, she was. This ride isn't based on the Peter Pan films. This is based on the Tinkerbell films, or the Disney Fairies films, where Tinkerbell is a fairy who lives in a fairy world and talks to fairies. So they make that important distinction. And for anyone who's seen those movies, they'll know that this little teapot to the left, that's Tinkerbell's house, and these mushrooms coming out, they're the steps up to her little teapot house. How adorable is that? It's wonderful. And as if that wasn't good enough, of all rides to take cues from, the guys designing this entrance clearly went to Tower of Terror and were like, okay, let's do that. Because that wonderful effect that they have on the entrance of Tower of Terror, where it goes from saying Hotel Hightower to suddenly these sparks start to emerge and it says Tower of Terror and then it disappears, which you'll also recognize from other Tower of Terror rides around the world. This takes that effect to the next level, where you see the light in the teapot go out, and then you see Tinkerbell fluttering around this sign, lighting it up and spreading pixie dust, fairy dust? Spreading dust everywhere, before she disappears off the left and poof, reappears inside the teapot. Just gorgeous, wonderful. Not to mention that all the lights are little flowers, all of the greenery all around it, it looks so natural and so beautiful, and perfectly sets the scene for this wonderful ride. When you step into the queue, you see even more wonderful details. I don't know why there's a dead bird here, but really, I was like waiting for him to move his head up or something. But no, that's what the bird does. Anyway, in the Tinkerbell movies, she is a tinker. She makes things. And we can see a lot of her creations around here that she's made from things that she's found in the human world. I absolutely adore this little model of her and Peter Pan in like a prototype buggy of the one that you're about to get in. Oh, it's just brilliant. So many great details in this queue. The fact that the queue lines are actually needles stuck in the ground with threads coming over them as the queue ropes. So much love went into this, and it really sets the scene for the ride. Now, I will say, this ride has been very divisive. And I think part of the reason for that is a problem that is across a few different rides at DisneySea. And that is, at DisneySea, everything goes so hard. The ride entrances go so hard. The queues go so hard. And sometimes the rides just can't live up to all of that. I think Sea Rider has this problem. I think 20,000 Leagues kind of has this problem, even though I do love that ride. And I think for some people who don't know what they're getting into, this ride could also be affected by that, because everything so far has been gorgeous. And then we get into the ride vehicle, and we go around the corner, and we see a screen with Tinkerbell, and Tinkerbell's telling us it's Cheese. Cheese is the name of the mouse in the movies, and also the love of my life. It's Cheese's birthday. So Cheese has got the day off, and we're gonna do Cheese's jobs for him. Now, Cheese normally takes things around because he's a mouse in a world full of fairies. He's kind of a big dude, so he can pull things around. Well, we've got Buggies that Tinkerbell made. We're gonna take things to all the 4 different seasonal areas of the fairy kingdom. Sounds great, right? So we do a little twirl. The vehicles are like a Fantasyland dark ride, but spinny. They're not like dizzyingly spinny, but it does have a spinny aspect to the ride, which I think is good, because I think the ride needs a bit more going for it, because the areas that you travel through are beautiful. They're these small, densely packed areas with gorgeous theming. But you go through spring and you see some ladybugs and things, and you're like, okay, that's nice, but nothing moves. And then you get through summer and you're like, oh, there's all sunflowers, okay. And nothing moves. And you start to get the idea, nothing moves in this ride. Okay. You get to winter and you see the eyes of, I think, the Never Beast. I haven't watched that movie yet. I have watched 3 of these Tinkerbell films in preparation for going here, but there's like 6 of them, I think. I haven't got around to all of them yet. But I think that's who's in there. But again, this is done by a screen, not an actual moving animatronic or moving figure or anything. We twizzle around, we're almost at the end of the ride, and nothing has moved at all. But then you see him. You see him in all his glory. The one they call Cheese. Cheese the mouse. It's his birthday, and you lucky person, are blessed with the gift of being able to see Cheese absolutely in his element, gobbling up his favorite thing in the world, cheese. He's surrounded by all these different types of cheese. He's got a cheese grater next to him just in case he wants to grate some of it to, I don't know, put it on a pizza or something. Can mice even eat dough? I have no idea. Mice eat anything, right? Anyway, you see him. He's got this little flower hat on his head. He's absolutely adorable. And you come off the ride and you're like, okay, that was the best ride ever. It's the best ride anyone has ever made, ever. Now, you may think I'm being sarcastic, and I'm not. I don't think I am. If I am, then I'm fooling myself as well as anyone else. I love this ride. I really, really do. For a ride where nothing moves except for one figure, and it's 2 minutes long, and it's a baby ride for babies, I think it is absolutely perfect. I think it's wonderful. I think it's exactly what DisneySea needed, this type of super family-friendly, kiddie-friendly ride that young children can come to DisneySea and be like, I want to do that, and they can enjoy it. There's not much to it, but what is there, from the entrance to the queue to the vehicles to all of the sets and the set pieces in the ride, and then to Cheese at the end, this glorious finale. Everything that is there is done so well that if you know what to expect, I think this ride is wonderful. I think it's absolutely delightful. Now, for some people, it's just not gonna be for you, and to those people, I feel sorry for you. I don't know if you will ever find joy if you can't find joy from this. It's wonderful. I mean, maybe it was helped by the fact that I had a magic pass, so I knew I could go round and round on stuff. You know, some people are going into Fantasy Springs, they can only do one ride, and they queue up 2 hours for this. I can understand people maybe being disappointed with it under those circumstances. But, oh, I love it. I love it. I think it's wonderful. But let's be honest, that's probably not the ride you wanted to hear about. The ride you probably wanted to hear the most about is Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure. What is it? Is it any good? Does it live up to the hype? Well, let's get into it. First up though, if you are enjoying this video, please do subscribe for weekly Tokyo Disney Resort videos, and please check out the Patreon if you want to further support the channel. A huge thank you to everyone who does that. So, Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure. This is the ride that we all thought was gonna be the big one. the e-ticket among e-tickets, the main attraction of Fantasy Springs. And it's not. It's not. It's very, very hard to argue anything other than Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey is the main attraction. That's the big draw. That's probably where most of the money went in terms of the ride budget. But then I think Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure is a very close second. And it's also just such a different type of ride, and it really complements what we already have with Frozen and then Rapunzel and Tinkerbell, not to mention the rest of the park and the rest of the resort. This ride is really unique. It really fills a gap in the ride lineup at Tokyo Disney Resort, and I think it's wonderful that we have a ride of this type in this resort now. So the first thing you see when you approach the ride is this pretty subtle ride entrance. Yes, you could argue that the ride entrance is basically the whole Neverland Mountains facade, but the actual area where you enter the queue is kind of modest, and I like that. Anything that can help this ride under-promise and over-deliver, I think, is a good thing. There's a small outdoor portion to the queue, which is very, very Disney, beautifully themed, beautiful placemaking, not a lot of energy, not a whole lot of stuff going on like you might find in a queue at Universal Studios or something. But it just starts to set the tone of what you can expect from this experience, and it continues the theme of broader Neverland where we've been. You would then enter an indoor queue section, which is subtle, but has some really nice little touches. Not just all of the props and scenery around, a lot of which you'll be able to recognize from the film, but also some great touches like in the clouds. If you watch them for a while, you'll see different Peter Pan silhouettes and characters appear in the clouds, which I think is a really nice subtle way of giving people something that's moving and changing, a bit of kinetic energy to the queue, without it, while still kind of teasing the anticipation rather than being like, you're in the experience right now, the ride starts now. It hasn't started yet. You're anticipating it. You're building yourself up to it. Now, I was very, very curious about whether or not any of the rides in Fantasy Springs would have a pre-show. I suspected that maybe Frozen would. It doesn't. And I suspected maybe this would. And it does. Now, this pre-show does a few things. It is not like the pre-show of Beauty and the Beast, where it is very much part of the attraction, and you could argue one of the best parts of the entire experience. No, this is much more of a typical pre-show in the sense that it's setting up the story. You are with the Lost Boys, you're in Neverland with the Lost Boys, and we're going to try to find Wendy and the boys. It also gives us an introduction to these characters in their CGI form, which we're going to see them in throughout the ride, which I think is very important to just set that up so that you don't get on the ride and you're like, oh, that's what Peter looks like? Okay, you've already had a few minutes to adjust to that. Okay, this is PhilharMagic Peter Pan versions, you know, they're all 3D CGI, that's fine, I get it. I have to say, the way that they've animated the Lost Kids is just brilliant. I think they have so much personality, they're so endearing, which is great because they are a much larger part of this attraction than you might have expected. This could very easily have been called the Lost Kids Neverland Adventure. You know, we, the guests, are joining the Lost Kids. We are the Lost Kids, and we're helping Peter Pan and Tinkerbell to find Wendy and the boys. We see Tinkerbell appear and try to wake the kids up, and then we see Peter Pan appear. And there's a really great, subtle special effect in this pre-show, which I think is very easy to miss, and I don't know whether I admire that they've kept it really subtle, or if I think they should have pushed it a bit further and made it more noticeable. But what we've got here is, these are actually Pepper's ghost effects. These are projections onto a pane of glass, and then behind the pane of glass you can see the back of the cave. But my problem is the back of the cave is very dimly lit, and you don't really get that sense of depth. It just feels like you're looking at a TV screen, which is a real shame. I think they could have just lit up the back of the cave a little bit more, especially behind Peter Pan, because with him, they do something really cool, and they don't just light up the back of that cave wall, they project a shadow onto it. So we see Peter Pan's shadow there, and depending on which side of him Tinkerbell is, the shadow will appear on a different side, like it would in real life. But then there's this great subtle touch at the end where Peter Pan dashes off, but his shadow is still there, and then his shadow dashes off as well and catches up with him. A great reference to the shadow part of the film. Just a wonderful little special effect, but I'm worried that too many people are going to miss it. I think they should have just made those Batcave walls a bit brighter. Maybe it was a technical issue. Maybe they couldn't do that without it reflecting off the glass or something. I'm not sure, but it's a great thing to look out for. And then at the end of the pre-show is the best part of the entire attraction. Trust me, is so brilliant. This might be the best use of movie music in a theme park ride ever. It's so good. They play Following the Leader. And the doors open, the guests walk through, and you're just hearing them, da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum, and it's so wonderful. It not only lets you know the experience has started, it gives you this wonderful, playful energy. It takes you back to the film. It's so nostalgic, and it's so fun and whimsical, and it sets the tone perfectly for this ride. You know, we're not going to get into the other rides. I'm going to do videos all about those. But the other rides in Fantasy Springs are kind of heavy. You know, Rapunzel is a love ride. It's a romance ride. Frozen is a ride about your sister nearly dying. Like, Peter Pan's the fun one, and Fantasy Springs needed something with more of that positive bounce to it. And this part of the attraction just captures that so well. It always makes me smile when I see all of the guests walking through, and you can't help but walk in time to hear them. Oh, I just love it. And then we're seeing even more of this. The lost kids have found bits of ship and whatever and built a den. And you think we might be sick of it by this point, but we're not, because here we're completely enveloped by it. There are some great touches, some lovely little details and things, which I'm going to do a whole Fantasy Springs Hidden Secrets video at some point, where I'll go into all of that stuff. But this is a lovely area, and you're not in here for very long anyway. You grab your pair of glasses, you turn around the corner, and you see these enormous, very unique-looking ride vehicles. Yes, this is the same ride system as the Spider-Man and Transformers rides that Universal have done. We've never seen Disney use this ride system. And Spider-Man and Transformers, the ride vehicles are very sleek, they're very modern, you know. This is like, there's so much to these things, and they just look absolutely huge. When you see them, it just looks like this ride is unlike any other ride you've ever seen before. They're so strange, but they're wonderful. A great little touch is that they all have different names on the backs of them, which I think is wonderful. Now, there's been a bit of discussion online with local fans about which row is the best. And it's very easy to ask a cast member which row you want. We did it every single time we rode. Viewers of the channel will know this is a great tip for any of the rides at Tokyo Disney. You can always ask for the front, you can always ask for the back, you can ask to sit wherever you want, and it's usually a very minimal extra wait. Now, whilst I can understand the appeal of being at the front of Peter Pan's flight, there's nobody in front of you, you get a totally unobstructed view. The ride vehicles have tiered seating, and they're really tiered. And it seems to me that the ride was designed primarily for the back row on this ride, because the back row is risen up, and a lot of the screens you're looking at are also risen up to that level. If you're sat at the front, you're pretty low down, and a lot of the time you have to kind of crane your neck upwards to be looking at the screen. Like, if you look straight in front of you, you're going to be seeing like rock work and theming that's below the actual screen of what you're supposed to be looking at. However, if you're in the back row, yes, you do have people's heads in front of you. You see some Mickey ears cutting into your view every now and then. But it's right in front of you. Everything's happening right in front of you. The characters are in front of you. The screens are right in front of you. The settings are right there. It feels like everything is just right there. You don't have to work for it. So personally, my pick is the back row. I can understand the front row, but if you're going to ride this once ever, maybe ask for the back. I haven't tried the middle row yet, but I mean, it's going to be in between the front and the back, right? I just think the back's great. Definitely what I'm going to be asking for every time I ride it in the future. Okay, so then you get that wonderful feeling. You're in the vehicle, you pull the lap bar down, very comfortable seats, very easy to fit into. The vehicles start moving forwards, you wave enthusiastically to the cast members, and then we begin our adventure. And this ride really is an adventure. Those 6 minutes feel like eternity. This ride really, really gives you everything you could want, to the point that I've actually heard some people complain, saying it's too long, which I think is crazy. I think we're just so accustomed to waiting an hour for an experience that's 1 or 2 minutes long. This ride is a wonderful length. It feels so long. It feels like you get to do so much, and that's a huge win for me, and I would think for most people. You know, Peter Pan has a wealth of characters and it has a wealth of settings that they had to choose from, and we get to really fully experience all of them. We start off just like the queue and the pre-show. We're in the Lost Kids' den. We see them all playing around and being silly, and then we're going to follow them through it. We hear follow the leader again. We follow them around. We get a little sneak peek at TikTok, and this is a bit nerdy, but we've been seeing that clip of CGI TikTok, the crocodile, for years now. Years and years. Imagineering used it as part of a Sizzler reel a few years back, and that was like the only thing we saw from inside any of these rides forever. So it was just such a cool moment for me personally, finally seeing that thing contextualized in the ride. And then we see Tinkerbell flying through the leaves before finally seeing Peter Pan right there in front of our vehicle. They use a really, really wonderful effect here. It's so simple, but it's so great. We need pixie dust to start flying around, right? So the whole vehicle gets covered in these small light particles. Just a great little touch that really makes you feel like you're part of the experience. You know, you're not just passively viewing something, you really are part of it. Another thing that really makes you feel integrated into the story is that because of the 3D technology, Peter Pan is looking right into your eyes. He's looking right at you. He's talking to you. Everyone else thinks he's talking to them, but really, he's just talking to you. We then get our first bit of flying around Neverland, the obligatory fall off a tall thing that simulators seem to feel the need that they always have to do. And then we find Wendy at Mermaid Lagoon. This is what I mean about because of the ride length, we get to just experience all these different parts of Peter Pan. I didn't expect us to spend any time in Mermaid Lagoon, but because of the ride length, we get to. Speaking of areas I did not expect to see, when you turn a corner here and you start seeing the silhouettes of the Native American characters, I was like, oh boy, okay. I know we still have Splash Mountain at Tokyo, but I thought when we're making new rides, okay. But I have to say, I think they recognize that this is a considerable part of the movie, and they represented it in a really sweet way, because the next thing we see is Tiger Lily bouncing up and down on this drum with Michael and his little teddy bear, and it's a really sweet moment. It's really cute. It brings a bit of that Tokyo Disney cute energy to the thing. Strangely enough, this is the second time we have a cute character bouncing up and down on a drum at DisneySea, which is great. You know? I mean, nobody does it better than my boy Chandu, but they tried their best. Something that I didn't notice the first time around was that this drum is an actual physical prop that's bouncing up and down. There are a few of those through the ride, not as much as I would have liked, to be perfectly honest, but they're here and there. And it does add a nice bit of energy to the ride, so it's not just screens, because, let's be honest, it is a lot of screens. I'll get into why I don't think that's a problem a bit more later on, but this is a screen ride, it's what it is. Okay, next up we're somewhere that I actually thought we would spend more time. This is the only part of the ride I expected to be longer, and it wasn't. But I think that's fine. So we have to go and rescue John from Captain Hook's pirate ship. And we have a little battle scene where Peter Pan's fighting Captain Hook, and we see all the pirates around and the ship. I guess maybe they felt like, similarly to how the Beauty and the Beast ride doesn't have the Belle opening number and it doesn't have Gaston, because we've already walked through Belle's village and Gaston's tavern is right there, maybe they felt like we've got Captain Hook's pirate ship in the Neverland area. We don't really need to spend that much time there in the ride. I guess that's fair, you know, I guess that's a reasonable takeaway. But this really adds a lot of that adventure energy, you know, seeing them all duking it out. And then I love going over to Skull Rock afterwards. It just feels like, again, there's a lot of screens in this ride, but it's nice the way that they've sort of segmented them and integrated them into the Skull Rock physical set here. Just makes it feel like a bit of a break from the big TV screens. We go back to some more fighting on Captain Hook's ship, which, I mean, come to think of it, I guess we do spend quite a lot of time there. It's just that this ride is so long. that we also get to spend a lot of time doing other things. So I just thought like more of a portion of the ride would be Captain Hook, but we do get plenty of time with him. And this is the first of the ride's kind of false finishes, where you feel like the ride is probably finishing or like ramping down at least, but it's just not. So a very familiar sight to anyone who's ridden Peter Pan's flight, especially the versions that he like here in Tokyo, is that at the end of the ride, or towards the end of the ride, we see Peter Pan defeat Captain Hook, take over the ship, and then Captain Hook is straddling the mouth of TikTok the crocodile, and then we kind of end the ride. We've vanquished the foe, right? It's the end of the story. Well, not on this ride. Because we've been so immersed in Neverland since we got in here, it's easy to forget how much of a big part of Peter Pan flying around London is. And now we get to do that. And this is where I feel like we kind of get 2 rides for the price of 1. Like, we've had a very nice adventure ride. We've had a very nice Peter Pan version of like a Spider-Man ride or something. And now we get like a flight simulator. We get a flying ride. The darlings need to fly back home, so we hear that classic You Can Fly music as we're soaring through the clouds. And it's a really special moment. This is one of those parts where, you know, again, I've heard people criticize it as kind of just nostalgia baiting and, you know, the ride is just trying to capitalize on the goodwill and nostalgia of the film. But, I mean, it's a Peter Pan ride. Isn't that kind of what it's supposed to do? We get a considerable amount of flying around London, which really more than ticks that box. And then a great subtle touch. Yes, it's another one of the small physicalities that I love. It's a little difficult to explain, but the movement of the buildings on the screen stops. But because the vehicle is still moving, they are getting further away. And then we see that crazy cartoonish forced perspective that they use in Peter Pan's flight, but here it's in reverse. We see the small buildings getting bigger and bigger until we then turn around and we're looking through the darling's window. I just thought this was such a great use of physical props. I love this cartoonish use of forced perspective. And again, it calls back to Peter Pan's flight, which I think is wonderful. We get to see Nana, which is very important. We couldn't have finished the ride without that. And then we're waving goodbye to the darlings. Okay, that's ride over, right? Nope. We've got to get back to Neverland. So then we get another nostalgia blast when we hear the second star to the right. And we fly again through to Neverland. We get to see Neverland in the distance, and then it draws closer. And again, it just feels like so much over-delivering. Yes, this is a screen ride, but for a screen ride, they give you so much. Something that it took me a few rides to realize or try is that because so much of the ride, all of the ride, there's a character right in front of you, right in the foreground. There's someone, they're normally looking at you, and like I said, they're looking right into your eyes. So just on a human level, you look at them, you focus on them. But for these flying areas, you know, a flying simulator, you don't want to be focused on a static figure that's sort of flying in front of you. You want to be enjoying the environment, right? You want to be, you are the main character. You're flying through this environment. So I had to sort of peel my eyes away from Peter Pan and Wendy at times and try and look at the environments. And when I did that, I enjoyed the ride quite a bit more. That's the luxury of having re-rides. If you come on a Magic Pass or you're lucky enough to get to ride it more than once, you can kind of have it both ways. But even if you do just ride it once, try to appreciate these environments and not just be locking eyes with Peter Pan the whole time. Because there's some crazy attention to detail in these animations. I mean, you really have to take your hat off to these guys. They went all the way with this stuff. Okay, so we're back in Neverland. That's the end, right? Nope, we're still gonna see our lost kids one more time. And it does this wonderful thing. My favorite ride in the world, Mystic Manor, does the same thing. I think rides should do it more often. We end where we began. They've rebuilt the scene from the beginning, exactly the same, here at the end. So it really cements that feeling that you have come back where you started. You've come back to the place where you got on the ride. So then it makes sense that you're coming back into the same station, right? And you're leaving from the same part of the area and all of that stuff. And it gives us a farewell to the lost kids, and it's just yet again another one of those, oh, it still hasn't ended. There's still something else. This is pure fan theory, but Monsters, Inc. Ride and Go Seek does a similar thing. That has about 4 different scenes where you feel like it could be the end of the ride, and then there's just more. And I feel like something I've said about DisneySea a lot is that it seems like Imagineering, when they design things, they usually over-design. They usually design extra stuff that they know they don't really need because they expect budget cuts to chop things off. So they want to be able to have some sacrificial lamb where they can say, well, okay, you're twisting my arm, fine, we'll take away this scene. When really all along, they kind of expected that to be cut out. And I feel like OLC are just like, oh, we love it, yeah, let's do that. And they're like, all of it? Everything? Yeah, okay. And I think it's very much for the betterment of this ride. Oh, I absolutely adore it. This is going to sound similar to my review of Tinkerbell because there are caveats, but yes, nothing really moves in the ride. Yes, it's basically all screens, but for a ride that's all screens, it's fantastic. And I honestly don't feel like they could have done the Peter Pan ride better with any other ride system. I really don't. Do I wish there was like some awesome Captain Hook animatronic or Peter Pan animatronic thrown in there? Yeah, that would have been really cool, you know, that would have felt like an upgrade. But you do also then run into problems of like, oh, why is he a robot here and he's a screen here? Like, it's a screen ride, it's a simulator ride. And you have to think, like, if you were going into this expecting something like Star Tours, like, oh, it's a screen ride, it's a simulator, and then you see all of this, you'd be blown away. You know, comparison is the thief of joy, so I hesitate to do this, but if I compare it to Spider-Man, which seems like the best comparison, right? Spider-Man and Transformers are the only other rides that have used this ride system in, like, major theme parks. Spider-Man packs way more of a punch. Those special effects, we have pyro, we have flame jets, we have all this stuff. It's so boom, boom, boom. This ride is a very, very different pace. This is a Disney ride. It's a Peter Pan ride. It's not a thrill ride like Spider-Man was. Or is, I guess, for any Americans watching who can still go to Islands of Adventure. The one in Japan closed a few months ago, and I'm still not okay about it. But, you know, we get to explore Neverland. We get to see all of these characters. We get to fly around Captain Hook's pirate ship while they're fighting all the pirates. We get to fly over London. We get to fly back through Neverland. I think it's wonderful. I think it's such a good addition to the resort. I think it's such a good addition to this land, because that's the other thing. If this was the new ride, I might be being a lot more harsh on it. But it's not. It's one of 4. We've got animatronics and physical sets in the Rapunzel ride, and we've got animatronics in the Frozen ride in abundance. We've got all that. Like, do we need another ride that's full of animatronics? Yes, always. We always need more rides that are full of animatronics. But this ride complements the whole area. It complements the park. It complements the resort. I'm so glad we have a ride like this. I feel like if you go in expecting it to be a tame, screen-based ride through Peter Pan, I don't see how you can be disappointed with this thing. It's wonderful. I wish I could say the same things about the Fantasy Springs Hotel, because that thing is a mess. If you want to see a full rundown of how the hotel in this land does not live up to the land at all, then you should really watch this video, because that hotel is something.